Sunday afternoon, just a little bit past 1:10. I think almost 1:15. And it is also the 25th, 2024. Sorry, leaning over to pet my cat. Um, and let's talk a little more about something I mentioned right after I worked out in my workout video that I've received, for me, a compliment. For him, I think it was a bit of some trolling involved, and how it was weird. And that, of course, YouTube, the internet itself, is weird because people like me uh, do burpees in front of a camera and then talk about weird stuff afterwards. And so, again, he was probably trolling, which is fine. For me, it was a great compliment. It was sort of a namaste. It was the unique weirdness that is me recognizes and salutes the unique weirdness that is you. However, most of the people who might say something like that sort of refuse and refute their own weirdness. They want to fit in, or they want to be just different enough, but not too different. If you're too different in society, you're made fun of, you're ostracized, you're kept on the edge. There was a New Age teacher decades ago, not that long ago. I know he was big in the 80s and the 90s, maybe even the early 2000s. He passed away in the 2010s, I believe. Stuart Wilde, some of you might be familiar with the writer. He sort of presented a New Age-ish Taoism, a little bit of Wiccan maybe philosophy thrown in, or old school, mystery school type of stuff. I enjoyed reading him back in the 80s and early 90s. And he talked about fringe dwellers. Those people who purposely live on the edge of society because they're weird. And that made quite an impression on me. The thing is, to be a fringe dweller means that you've embraced that label as much as you embrace any label. That, or better yet, you've stepped outside the entire realm of labels. You just don't care. You do your stuff. And it seems to me such a better way of living your life. Maybe difficult in a sense because, you know what, if you work in the corporate world, you got to toe the line. If you work in almost anything outside of the arts, and even then, some of the structure of selling your stuff, you got to toe the line. You got to fit in. And fringe dwellers just don't. I think in this day and age, more than ever, you might be able to make a living as a fringe dweller. But you got to be true to yourself. You got to be courageous. You got to be fearless. Now, of course, being fearless doesn't mean being without fear. It means, who was it? Another New Age writer? Maybe she was a New Age. Feeling the fear and doing it anyway. I actually never read the book, but I always like the title. Feeling the fear and doing it anyway. That's being an artist. That's being a writer. Being a painter as well. You show up in the morning, assuming you write or paint in the morning, and you're faced with an empty canvas. You're faced with a blank page. And your only role is to fill it with something that has direct meaning to you, is to fill it with something that you find beautiful, that you find meaningful, has value. And it truly only becomes art when you share it, when you put it out there. And that takes a lot of guts. Not everyone wants to do that. I know lots of artists who have never shared anything they've ever written or anything they've ever painted. And that's a shame. The great thing about YouTube, everyone has their own gallery. Same with having a blog. The same with the internet across the board. but I think particularly YouTube. And I've taken full advantage, or I'm taking full advantage of that. And I'm putting my stuff out there. When I started my burpee channel, first I was a little reluctant to share some of my writing in my blog. I did a little bit, hit and miss. I talk about meditation. I talk all the time about yoga, um, to the point where you guys are like, is he still talking about yoga? Um, and I talk about whatever pops in my mind. These are all free-ranging conversations. I started doing the shorts with my blog writing. Lyrical prose is the label that I give it. Although it doesn't really fit in any label, that's as close as I can get. And it is fitting. It's not traditional poetry, it's not traditional prose, it's its prose, it's its own thing. And what I sort of discovered was sometimes breaking it up into the shorts, 30-second clips, 15-second clips, it loses the continuity. Lyrical prose should be rather seamless. And I noticed that I might share one post, but it was broken up 3 times, and one would get lots of views, and another, maybe the most important part, maybe not, sometimes though, would get very few. And it occurred to me that it doesn't really make sense then if you're only reading part of it and you don't get the whole picture. So I don't think shorts are the best avenue for my writing. Now, if I was writing haikus, which I've done before, I used to write a great deal of what's called a haibun, which is a haiku or a shortened style of a haiku, followed by lyrical prose afterwards, a more descriptive, filling in the details. I used to enjoy that. And I still try to stick with brevity when I write, going more towards that, the Sufism style of poetry, the Japanese haiku style. Our friend Destiny Forever Walks, PhD, is here. How are you? Good. How are you, Destiny? So, yep, I'm doing away with the shorts for my lyrical prose, and I'm just going to read the whole thing. I mentioned this a couple days ago. I've done 2 days worth so far. And I'm going to just share the entire post in a second live session for the day. Keeping it short, still being interactive, but not as long. I don't want to do anything really over 15 minutes. Even that might be too long. We'll see how it goes. That way I can read the whole post, the whole lyrical prose, and hopefully, you know, it'll be more relatable, more understandable. The thing is, back to the point, YouTube is open for you to be the artist you wanted to be. But for me, and I make this point fairly often, art has to be shared. To be true art, its beauty has to be put out there, even if it's not fully appreciated by others. There will be one person who absolutely falls in love with it. There might be lots of people who fall in love with it. There will also be people who will rush to put you down for what you do. Ignore them or engage with them pleasantly, serenely, but be untouched by what they have to say. Be untouched by what they put out there. It doesn't concern you. It concerns them. It's their reflection on what you do, but it has nothing to do with who you are or what you do. It has nothing to do with your artistic integrity. That is untouchable. That is something intrinsic to the beingness of you. And the beingness of you is something that is unfazed by those comments. It's only our thoughts, it's only our minds that are ever fazed by those type of comments. It's only the physiological aspects. The soul of an artist never wavers because it has one purpose only, and that is to receive and share beauty and meaning. The beauty and meaning that only they can see. And that's the wonderful thing about being an artist. And guess what? Every single one of you, anyone who ever stumbles across this, you're an artist. You might not be doing anything now. You might not be producing anything, but that still makes you no less an artist than a Van Gogh, than a Monet. Because life itself is a work of art, and only you get to live it. If you are unhappy with the art that you're displaying, you're an artist. Change it. Draw a new picture of your life. Draw a new, sculpt a new expression of your body, of your mind, of your soul. You're capable of it because you're an artist. Destiny says, happy Sunday. Eric, getting my day mixed up. My bad. That's okay. That happens to all of us. So the people who are going to pick on your writing, again, the person who came and looked at me doing burpees and said, this is so weird. People do weird things on YouTube. I absolutely agree. But here's what I disagree with. That weird and how they were putting it means something bad instead of somebody saying weird. And the way I take it is, that's absolutely wonderful that you think so. I truly appreciate that you have noticed and embraced my own uniqueness that sets me apart and my beingness than any other beingness in the entire cosmos, in the entire universe. We should all be as weird as we can possibly be, which means that we just let ourselves be. We don't have to. Here's an example. This isn't to pick on anyone politically, but it is using a politician as an example. Amy Klobuchar, who I think was and is a wonderful senator from Minnesota, I believe. She was running for president in 2000. I don't remember if it was 2020 or 16. I think it was 2020. And she was at a fundraising picnic in North Carolina, and it was a chicken cookout, and everybody was at picnic benches and eating, and she looked around and she saw people eating chicken differently than her. I think she might have been using a knife and fork, and she sent her aides out to go all around the area and find out how people are eating the chicken before she would take another bite, because she wanted to fit in. She couldn't simply enjoy her chicken however she wanted to eat it, because running for president, being in the public eye, meant she couldn't be different. Not in her own party, not in her own tribe. She had to fit in with the tribe. My answer to that is screw that. Eat your chicken. Okay, I'm going to take a step backwards. My answer to that is, one, be a vegan. Leave the chickens alone. They don't need to be eaten. Other than that, eat how you eat. Be comfortable in your own skin, and that includes being comfortable with your awkwardness. And if someone points out, well, you're pretty awkward, smile. Smile your awkward smile and accept it with full grace and bemusement and curiosity and wonder, because that's what you are. The people who would like to point out all those things about you that they feel are different and should be hidden, are doing you a great service. They're letting you know you're on track, that you're being creative, that you're being unique, that you're being the wonderful self that you are. Thank them. This is what Carlos Castaneda, and here we go to my favorite Google tool. This is what Carlos Castaneda called petty tyrants. And he would urge us all to, if we don't have a petty tyrant, go out and get one. We need one. We need one in our life. They're the ones who always have a negative comment to make. They're the ones who come on YouTube and say you're doing it wrong. The ones that say you're being weird. Put a shirt on. Cut off your ponytail. Do this. Do that. And that's pretty weird. That someone would take it upon themselves to point out these things. So they are the petty tyrants of Carlos Castaneda. Here's a quote from, going to be a couple quotes, I think. From Carlos Castaneda, and this is from The Fire Within. All of his books are wonderful books. Whether you believe it's true or not, read them as a metaphor, it doesn't matter. There's deep wisdom in all of the writing. And the teachings themselves, you can argue where the teacher existed or didn't exist. It doesn't matter. What matters is the message, the teaching. So before I go into the quotes, let me catch up with Destiny. Eric, you said you were getting rid of your shorts. I didn't understand what you meant. Don't delete any videos that you have already posted. Keep them in the archives. Just start doing a new way. I agree, and that's a better way of saying it. I should say I'm not really getting rid of them. I'm taking them from a different path. I'm going to stick with, I might still do reading a short if it's concise. Pithy is the word that I like. If it's pertinent to an occasion. But the shorts that I want to keep doing are the nature shorts, which I just love doing. I love seeing, and I love sharing the beauty of my area with others. Even the little things. And it's like I did one yesterday of moss. I don't know who wants to see moss, but I absolutely love moss. I love the thought of life growing on life, life feeding itself on life for the benefit of itself and the benefit of the species that it's feeding with, that it's this benefactor relationship, symbiotic relationship between the two. So I will do that, and possibly more so, some with voiceovers of the little things like I did with the stream, and I did this morning with the moon. I think it was right before 5 o'clock in the morning, and the moon was shining, still an hour or two away from dawn. But the moon had its own illumination. Yes, it's a reflection of the sun's light. However, at that point, before dawn, the moon is in the light of its own existence. And what I'll keep doing, and I mentioned this, Destiny, with you, I'm going to do the live sessions reading the entire blog, the entire post, because I think it gives it a more seamless presentation, and it will make more sense. And people can ask me directly, what do you mean by what you wrote, by what you read? Or, any questions, any comments, good or bad, doesn't matter to me. Well, I don't want to say it doesn't matter. I definitely appreciate the good comments. But at the same time, the bad comments about my writing, which thankfully I don't get too many of, but if I do, It's just a critique. I really don't care. Um, I'm gonna, it's a long thing here. It's actually from the Toltec tradition itself. So we have Don Miguel Ruiz talking about a petty tyrant as well. If you're not familiar with Don Miguel, he wrote The Four Agreements, which is an excellent little book and a concise spiritual and personal path of development that is so easy to follow. Um, not always easy to live by because, one of the tenets that we'll talk about here is don't take anything personally. And we all love hearing that. From this point on, I'm not going to take anything personally. And then someone walks by and they hear you say that and they go, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And you immediately get offended. How dare you say that about my new spiritual path? And then you realize, and then you go back and you say, it will not take. That's how you live life, making mistakes. No one walks a straight line on any path. Feel free to curve. Feel free to waver. Feel free to fall off the path entirely. You just step back on. So a petty tyrant is a person who causes distress by imposing his or her will on others using psychological pressure rather than physical force. The petty tyrant feels he may impose his will because he believes that he is superior, he is a superior being, and because he wants to operate from a position of authority. Petty tyrants are the bottom pushers, the individuals that have the ability to throw things off balance for you, if you let them. Many petty tyrants are unaware that they are the cause of so much frustration. They are effective teachers because they force the warrior to closely monitor their own reactions and habitual behaviors. The result is mindfulness and the ability to shift the assemblage point. The assemblage point is our point of awareness. Even if ever so slightly, in order to loosen the fixation to the conditional response that causes the reaction in the first place. It's about awareness. If someone pushes our button, it's not their fault. It's the fault of the button. And when we're aware of that, we can shift the assemblage point, meaning we shift the button itself. We loosen its hold. Castaneda believed that by looking at the petty tyrant through a different filter, a person could not only coexist with a petty tyrant, but also benefit from the relationship. This type of relationship would be most common to the workplace, school, or other public forum. When this was written, I think it was before the internet. So the challenge for the warrior is to try to consciously get along with this co-worker without being petty yourself. It's a rise above opportunity that could challenge one to the core. Don Miguel Ruiz summarizes by saying, don't take anything personally. This is the biggest gift of the petty tyrant, to be able to recognize that even though you will be annoyed to no end by the petty tyrant, one must not allow themselves to be energetically attached to the petty tyrant. So, that's my view on the people who show up to troll. They're beneficial. If I have a reaction other than laughter and a smile, examine the reaction. Examine why I had that to begin with. I don't have to change it. I don't have to say, well, I'm going to do better next time. I don't have to do anything other than be aware. And through awareness itself, everything changes. Destiny says, your nature shorts are a big catch. Bring more of them. I love the extending time of your readings like you did yesterday for 10 minutes. Great, Eric. Thank you. And, again, I use you and the J, Reverend Terminator, as that creative inspiration of what I can do with my channel that's uniquely me. I don't see anyone doing what you do, Destiny. Um, and I don't think you would care if someone did. Uh, but what I'm saying is that I don't think anyone else can do like you do, because you bring your own unique joy and presence, your own unique beingness to the things that you do. Um, and that shines forth. And it's the same with Reverend Terminator, and it's the same with the J. I don't see anyone doing what the J does or Reverend Terminator. Um, I don't think that I'm as um, bold as you three. Um, and I don't mean that in a uh, I don't mean that really anything other than uh, my own creativity is just very understated, I think. I just come and talk. And as someone pointed out, I talked about my own talents were curiosity and enthusiasm. And they came and pointed out that's not a talent, that's a trait. Any trait that you develop and you use to create something is a talent, in my opinion. So I just put me out there. Um, my own uniqueness, my own curiosity, my own enthusiasm, and I share it. Destiny says, people in nasty comments will push you to your greatness and success. I agree. If you just ignore them and stay focused on your passion and dream. I agree as well. And although what Don Miguel was saying and Carlos Castaneda talked about, engaging with them, and I always engage with people who come by to troll, for the most part. Not because not because I think I'm going to change anyone's mind, um, because they're here and it's part of the moment. It's part of their creativity. It's part of what's happening, and I don't have any desire to ignore anything that happens in my life across the board. It doesn't mean that I have to lend it any undue attention, but the more I can observe something, the more I can be aware of something and not be energetically engaged or brought down by it, the better I feel. Because it's all just, it's much like winter. I don't enjoy winter through my own lifelong dealing with depression. What I notice that it worsens during the colder months, and that can be difficult to deal with. However, as life's going on, especially the last few years, what I've learned is to appreciate what winter brings. And that means even appreciating the negative aspects of what it brings. And instead of learning to, I don't know if everything needs to be dealt with. Sometimes we just let things be. And there's this great relaxation in letting something be. Not everything needs to be changed. We don't have to always view things as an aversion or as an attachment. We don't need to be attached to being up here all the time. And I don't need to have an aversion to being down here all the time. I can happily coexist with sometimes being here and sometimes being here. And I can view it all through that lens of awareness that never changes, that never goes up and never goes down. The awareness itself simply is. It's the fluctuation of my thoughts, the fluctuations of my physiology, the fluctuation of my personality, my ego, that has those ups and downs. My true core, my true identity, my beingness itself is unaffected by all of that. So all of those things that happen, trolls, the weather, winter, seasons, are things that are occurring within the great awareness of which we are. If I realize that, I can just relax, because it's not going to last. Absolutely nothing will last. For every troll that shows up, there is a Dr. Destiny that shows up that makes me smile and offers so much more than a troll ever could. But sometimes you take those wonderful people and the bad people, and it's just how life works. Not everyone can be a Destiny Forever Walks PhD, which makes me appreciate her all the much more. So, again, those petty tyrants that enter our life, they're there to teach. It's up to us whether we are willing to learn itself. Here's another quote from Carlos Castaneda. And then we're going to, I think, call it a day. I'm going to go do my second and last meditation for the day. Nothing can temper the spirit of a warrior as much as the challenge of dealing with impossible people in positions of power. Only under those conditions can warriors acquire the sobriety and serenity to stand the pressure of the unknowable. I love the acquire the sobriety and serenity to stand the pressures of the unknowable. And that's living a life of awareness, living a life through awareness, or better said, recognizing ourselves as awareness itself. So, as Carlos Castaneda had said in one of his books, if you don't have a petty tyrant, go out and find one. They help you immensely. Forbearance. That's the word. So, guys, we're going to call it a day. Destiny, thanks for coming in. I appreciate it. And I appreciate not only encouragement, but the great advice as well. Anything that my channel is, and anything that my channel will become, owes a great debt of gratitude to all that you've done. Your support, and again, your encouragement, your inspiration, and the great wisdom that you've shared with me. Not just in matters of putting stuff out there, not just in matters of content, but in matters of life, in matters of beingness. And that's why I love your expression, fellowship. I could not have done anything on YouTube without our fellowship of beingness. So thank you, my friend. Very much appreciated. So, guys, if you have time, maybe a little bit after 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, I'm going to do a live reading from my blog. I don't as yet know what I'm going to read. Maybe something that I wrote today. Maybe something I wrote a year. Maybe go all the way back in the archives. I got 24 years of blog stuff to choose from. And you just never know what's going to pop up. So, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I'll see everyone later today.